Bonjour à tous, bienvenue. Hello. This press conference regarding the security situation in Ottawa is being held remotely on Saturday, February 19th. I'm the moderator, Greg Quinn with Market News International. With us today, we have Marco Mendicino, Minister of Public Safety, Helena Jaksic, Minister responsible for the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario, Mary Ng, Minister of International Trade, Yasser Naqvi, Member of Parliament for Ottawa Centre and Parliamentary Secretary to the President of the Queen's Privy Council and Minister of Emergency Preparedness, Bill Blair, Minister of Emergency Preparedness, et encore avec nous aujourd'hui, l'Honorable Mona Fortier, Président du Conseil de Trésor, David Lametti, Ministre de la Justice et Procureur général du Canada, et l'Honorable Dominique Leblanc, Ministre des Affaires intergouvernementales. For those who have dialed in, I remind everyone to stick to best practices to minimize outside noise. Et pour poser une question, appuyez sur le bouton raise hand. Secondly, feel free to identify yourself and your media outlet when asking a question and a follow-up dans une question, une supplémentaire. I understand we have an hour for opening statements and questions today. That housekeeping done, let's begin with the opening remarks. Ministers, bienvenue, à vous la parole.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour tout le monde. I'm pleased to be joining you virtually from the traditional Indigenous territories of the Algonquin people and to be joined by a number of colleagues who will also be providing updates within their respective portfolios. Yesterday, we saw big strides taken towards restoring public order in Ottawa as a result of a massive joint operation led by the Integrated Central Command, which is made up of the Ottawa Police Service, the Ontario Provincial Police, and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So far, police have made over 100 arrests, removed many vehicles, and have cleared the areas around Rideau and Sussex. In fact, many of the blockades in the downtown core have either left or have been removed. Today, more progress is being made. Police are making their way through the streets methodically and responsibly. This is encouraging, but the work is not yet done. I want to express my gratitude to all of the members of the RCMP, the OPP, the Ottawa Police Service, and officers from right across the country who have been working tirelessly and around the clock to restore order in Ottawa. They have been carrying out their responsibilities in a professional, proportional, and in a measured manner. L'opération policière qui a commencé jeudi soir et s'est poursuivie tout au long de la journée d'hier se poursuit. Je tiens à féliciter tous les membres des forces de l'ordre pour leur approche tactique, leurs mesures et leur professionnalisme. Je tiens à rappeler une fois de plus à toute personne qui envisage d'entrer ou de rester dans cette zone, partez maintenant. Je tiens également à rappeler à chacun d'éviter de publier les détails des opérations ou des mouvements de la police sur les médias sociaux. Yesterday, the Ottawa Police Service Interim Chief Bell, along with members from the RCMP and OPP, held a joint press conference. And during that press conference, Interim Chief Bell noted the significant action that police have taken over the last number of days has been possible thanks to new authorities granted to the police under the Emergencies Act. To quote the chief, "Without these authorities, we wouldn't be able to do the work we are doing today." This is why our government took the careful and deliberate decision to invoke the Emergencies Act. We've given additional tools to law enforcement to ensure that we can restore public order in Ottawa, to keep open our borders for trade and for economic security, and to ensure that we are upholding public safety across the country. The very carefully tailored measures which have been included as part of the declaration under the Emergencies Act are targeted, they're time limited, and they are charter guaranteed. Enfin, je veux partager quelques détails sur notre progrès dans la lutte contre le financement de ces blocages illégaux. Lors de la réunion d'hier du groupe d'intervention en cas d'incident, nous avons été informés des progrès réalisés dans la mise en œuvre des mesures financières prévues sur la loi sur les situations d'urgence. Jusqu'à présent, les fournisseurs de services financiers ont gelé au moins 76 représentant environ 3,2 millions de dollars. This is another example on how the concrete and targeted measures under the Emergencies Act are being put into effect. We have been able to freeze at least 76 accounts representing $3.2 million that were attributable to the illegal blockades. Additionally, FINTRAC's pre-registration process is ongoing, and it is working with small and medium-sized banks to implement the Emergency Act's orders. As we have said all along, we have taken the decision very carefully, very thoughtfully, and as a measure of last resort to invoke the Emergencies Act. It is time limited, it is targeted, and it requires compliance with the Charter to ensure that we are protecting the individual freedoms and principles and values that are guaranteed under the Charter, while at the same time enabling law enforcement to do the job on the streets, in our neighborhoods, at our borders to uphold public safety. We will only use the Emergencies Act for as long as is necessary, and that is something that we continue to be focused on every day. Thank you very much. Merci. And I will now pass it back to the moderator.
Okay, thank you for those statements. We will now turn to questions. The first one I see is David Aiken, Global News. David, over to you.
Sorry, there was maybe other statements to be said before, moderator, if you would let us.
Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Thank you.
I think you're next.
I believe I am. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour à tous. I would like to acknowledge that I'm joining you virtually from Holland Landing, and I am here today on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe of the Williams Treaty First Nations, Huron-Wendat, and Métis Nation peoples. For the past 3 weeks, the city of Ottawa has been devastated by illegal blockades. Depuis près 3 semaines, les gens du centre-ville d'Ottawa subissent les conséquences des blocus illégaux qui s'y déroulent. I've seen firsthand the effects these illegal blockades have had on Ottawa residents and their businesses. Businesses have been forced to drastically reduce their hours, and in many cases, they have had to close their doors entirely because they have been harassed and intimidated. Throughout the city, residents who have steadfastly supported those businesses throughout the pandemic no longer feel safe to go out on the streets of their city to visit those great local businesses that help define Ottawa's vibrant neighborhoods. This has taken a tremendous economic and social toll on the people and entrepreneurs in Ottawa. It has occasioned tremendous inconvenience and stress and cost millions of dollars in lost revenue. These businesses play a vital role in the vitality and economic prosperity of our nation's capital. À Ottawa, les entreprises situées au centre-ville jouent un rôle important dans la vitalité et la prospérité économique de notre ville. As the Prime Minister has said many times, these recent challenges have been unprecedented, but our government will be there as we build towards recovery, not only from this illegal blockade, but from the pandemic. That's why today I'm proud to announce that the Government of Canada, through FedDev Ontario, is investing up to $20 million to support Ottawa downtown businesses impacted by the illegal blockades. Je suis heureuse d'annoncer que le gouvernement du Canada, par l'intermédiaire de FedDev Ontario, investit jusqu'à 20 millions de dollars dans l'Investir Ottawa pour soutenir les entreprises du centre-ville d'Ottawa touchées par les blocus illégaux. Small businesses in Ottawa will be eligible to receive non-repayable contributions of up to $10,000. More details on eligibility and the applications process will be available soon. This funding will be delivered by Invest Ottawa, which has a strong track record of supporting the business community in Ottawa, having delivered targeted programming and services to businesses for over a decade. Invest Ottawa is collaborating with key partners in the region on this initiative, including the Ottawa Board of Trade and the Ottawa Coalition of Business Improvement Areas. We are aware that other areas of Ontario have faced similar struggles, and we are looking into this. Our government will continue to work hard to ensure our businesses, communities, and all Canadians have the support they need for a strong and resilient economic recovery. Thank you, merci. And I think now I'm turning over to the Honourable Mary Ng.
Thank you. Merci, Minister Jacek. It's really great to be here with you and colleagues, as well as to Minister Fortier and to Parliamentary Secretary Nakvi and to all of the Ottawa area members of Parliament who have been incredible advocates for their constituents throughout this challenging time. As workers, small businesses, and people across the country have struggled through this pandemic, these past 3 weeks have even been more difficult for businesses at the heart of our nation's capital. Whether it's Elgin, Bank, Sparks, or the Market, I've heard from entrepreneurs and small businesses across Ottawa. And just when those very businesses across our province have been opening their doors again, businesses here have had to close theirs for the safety of their staff and that of their customers. And that has been unacceptable. C'est inacceptable que des petites entreprises aient eu à fermer en raison de ces barrages illégaux. This $20 million in support from our government will bring much needed relief to heavily impacted Ottawa businesses. And I want to thank Invest in Ottawa for their ongoing collaboration with FedDev to deliver this important support. Today's announcement is just one more step that our government is taking to support small businesses. Since the start of this pandemic, we've invested in crucial supports, including the wage subsidy, the rent subsidy, the hardest hit business recovery program, and recently extended lockdown supports. Businesses have relied on these programs and will continue to have to count on them so that we can bridge them to recovery. As the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, and my ministerial colleagues have said, no one has the right to illegally occupy our cities, disturb our communities, and to cause serious harm by shutting down small businesses and preventing hardworking Canadians from being able to work. We will continue to have your backs through this pandemic, just as we have done, and we will drive towards a strong, inclusive, and sustainable economic recovery. And to the Canadians who are listening to this, when these businesses reopen, please support our local businesses in Ottawa. I know I will. Thank you so very much. Merci tout le monde. And over to you, Minister Fortier.
Thank you, Mary. Bonjour. Merci pour votre présence. Good morning, and thank you all for joining us today. Vous savez, les dernières semaines ont été particulièrement difficiles pour nos entreprises locales, nos organismes communautaires, nos travailleurs et nos familles. Les résidents d'Ottawa et de toute la région de la capitale nationale ont subi et continuent de subir une situation qui est inacceptable. Nos petites entreprises ont fait preuve d'une incroyable résilience tout au long de cette pandémie. Nos services essentiels ont été aux premières lignes de cette pandémie et nous ont aidés à maintenir la sécurité des résidents. We know that in the past weeks, many businesses have been forced to close their doors and have been subjected to intimidation, harassment, violence, and hatred. This situation has caused major disruptions of access. It has impacted staffing, delivery of goods, and generated significant loss of revenue. This is unacceptable. We are here to let you know we stand with you, and we will continue to have your back. Today's announcement demonstrates our government's commitment to making sure our downtown Ottawa businesses have the relief funds they need to recover. In the past weeks, I've had numerous conversations with Mayor Watson. I've also spoken and listened at lengths with city councillors, representatives of local BIAs, OCO BIA, the Ottawa Business Trade, le regroupement des gens d'affaires de la capitale nationale, Invest Ottawa, and business and community leaders. I have been actively engage with concerned businesses owners, residents, and organizations through countless phone calls, emails, and text messages. They have shared firsthand with me the disruptions to their livelihood and well-being. Et je sais également que de nombreux travailleurs ont été touchés car ils n'ont pas pu quitter leur domicile en raison des barrages routiers et de l'insécurité, ou que leurs employeurs ont dû fermer leurs portes. Les employés admissibles peuvent appliquer à l'assurance emploi et nous continuons d'explorer les options pour offrir des soutiens additionnels. Cette annonce aujourd'hui est possible grâce au travail acharné de mes collègues ici présents, mais aussi grâce au dévouement de mes collègues de la région de la capitale nationale qui, depuis le tout début, se trouvent au premier rang de l'immense pression et des difficultés engendrées par cette situation. Ils ont été à l'écoute, ont partagé les préoccupations des résidents, des travailleurs et des entreprises dans leur communauté et ont su défendre leurs intérêts férocement. Merci pour votre travail et nous allons continuer à s'assurer que nos entreprises puissent reprendre rapidement. Merci. Je passe la parole à mon collègue d'Ottawa Centre, Yassir Nakvi.
Merci beaucoup, la ministre. Thank you very much. For the past 22 days, members of my community have been held hostage by an unlawful occupation. Les membres de ma communauté qui vivent et travaillent dans la centre-ville souffrent. They have been harassed, subjected to hurtful and racist symbols, and there has been reports of assaults. For weeks, many businesses downtown have had to close their doors to ensure staff safety and security of their shops. Whether that is Moo Shiu Ice Cream on Bank Street, Ayana Restaurant on O'Connor, or Yemin Dim Sum on Kent Street, they and others have all had an incredibly rough time. The list goes on and on. Throughout the pandemic, the federal government has been there for small businesses and workers. Now is no different. I'm pleased that today's funding announcement will help businesses in Ottawa's downtown core recover from the impacts of these protests so that they can continue serving our community. Thank you to Invest Ottawa for helping us quickly distribute the support to those in need. We know how valuable Invest Ottawa has been for our region and for so many businesses who have been impacted by the pandemic, and will now be there to support businesses who have been impacted by these unlawful protests. I would also like to address the workers who have been impacted by these protests. Please do know that we are seeking further measures that can provide relief for you. At this time, the Canada Worker Lockdown Benefit, CWLB, which gives temporary income support to employed and self-employed people who cannot work due to COVID-19 lockdown, continues to be available. My colleagues and I are working closely together to seek further measures that will provide support during this difficult time. And finally, to the residents of Centertown, I know this has been an unimaginably difficult time. No, we will get through this together, and better days are to come. Thank you everyone for joining. Merci à tous. Media availability will now follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Ministers. Merci. Again, if you have a question on the call, please use the raise hand button to indicate your interest. I will turn to the first question. David Aiken, Global News.
Thank you very much, Greg, and thank you, ministers. I don't have a statement, just questions. And the first one, I guess, probably for Minister Mendicino or Minister Lametti, but I guess, Minister Mendicino, I think you mentioned that this Emergencies Act will remain in place as long as it needs to. And I'm watching what seems to be a very successful police operation, we hope, wrap up right now here in Ottawa. What are you looking for as the public safety minister to say, right, that's it, we don't need the special powers anymore in place? What are some of the things that Canadians can say, I see that this can be lifted? And to be honest, could it be lifted by the end of the weekend?
Well, I think it's an important question. And as I've said a number of times, David, that the situation is very fluid. So I agree with you on the surface. There does appear to be good progress that is being made on the streets in Ottawa. And I do want to take a moment to express our profound gratitude to the members of law enforcement who've been carrying out this work under extraordinarily difficult conditions. It's not just all of the uncertainty that the illegal blockades and those who are dug in present, but yesterday the weather took a turn for the worse, and certainly, we're watching all of those variables play out in real time, and we're all on pins and needles for the safety of those who are on the streets, principally the residents who, as you heard from MP Nakvi and Minister Fortier, have been under siege now for far too long. We're concerned for the safety of those law enforcement individuals who are carrying out their responsibilities with great professionalism and under incredible stress. And we're also concerned for the safety of those individuals who have become intermingled with the illegal blockades. Thus far, I think we're all relieved that there has been a very minimum amount of confrontation and violence, and we certainly hope that that will continue to be the case going forward. And the best way for that to happen is that those who are still here go home, as we have said time and time again. And as for the Emergencies Act, there are many safeguards that are built into the Act to assure that we only use it for as long as is necessary. And so when it comes to making that determination as to when the conditions are no longer present such that the Emergencies Act are required, the declaration and the orders are required, first and foremost, I want to make sure that we take the advice of law enforcement. We're in routine touch with the commissioner of the RCMP and with other members of law enforcement. We'll let them assess operationally, since it is their domain of expertise, whether or not they think the situation is in hand. So yes, there has been progress, but the situation remains dynamic, it remains fluid, and we'll wait to see how things unfold in the coming hours and days.
Thanks. And a follow-up probably for you as well, Minister Mendicino. We know that there was some arrested in Coutts who were associated with some extremist far-right groups such as Diagonalong, some groups that are known presumably to authorities, national security authorities, et cetera, that they may advocate violence. We also know, I think you've said this earlier in the week, that there may be some elements in the protest here in Ottawa associated with those groups. So I'm wondering, with the 100 or so arrested now, do you have anything more you can tell us about the presence in Ottawa of any elements, any individuals who might be associated with some of these groups that did represent some violent threats? Is there anything you can share on that front?
Well, just what you see in the public domain and on social media, and those reports are very public around the movements of some individuals from one blockade to the other. But as to the charges, which stem from the illegal blockade in Coutts, which include, among other things, the conspiracy to commit murder, those are now before the courts, David. It would be inappropriate for any member of the government to comment further on it. Obviously, as those charges play out in court and will be assigned to a prosecutor, there will be more details shared about exactly what particulars underlie the situation there. But I will say that as a government, we are looking at the big picture. We are looking at the timing, the tactics, the targets of the illegal blockades. And I just want to assure you and everyone that both law enforcement and our national security apparatus are watching the situation very, very carefully.
Thank you, merci. Prochaine question, Mylène Clette, La Presse.
Bonjour. Pour revenir un peu sur la question de mon collègue David, je me demandais en ce qui a trait à la loi sur les mesures d'urgence, vous avez dit que vous allez consulter les policiers pour savoir s'ils estiment que ce sera toujours nécessaire. Mais quels critères exactement est-ce que vous allez tenir en compte? Là, parce qu'hier, vous parliez de prévention. Or, ma compréhension, c'est que la loi ne peut pas être utilisée à titre préventif.
Oui, vous avez des raisons. Il y a un élément de prévention là. parce que la situation restait fluide, restait dynamique sur le terrain, pas seulement en Ottawa, mais même à les frontières où le jour avant hier, il y a un effort, une opération de les blocades illégales de résumer, recommencer le blocade à la pont d'ambassadeur. C'est une inquiétude qui est partagée par les communautés à Windsor, même par les forces policières et même le gouvernement. Donc, ça, c'est une des raisons que les outils dans les déclarations, dans les ordres de la loi de mesures d'urgence restaient nécessaires. Et peut-être quelques autres perspectives. Je vais passer la parole maintenant à le ministre Lametti.
Merci, Marco. Merci, Mylène. Ce qu'il faut comprendre, c'est que la loi sur les mesures d'urgence a été déclarée pour une situation évoluante et le fait que les convois pouvaient se déplacer facilement d'une place à l'autre et qu'il y avait des communications entre les différents endroits, c'est une situation donc qu'il faut suivre, qu'il faut continuer à suivre. Donc, oui, il y a un côté préventif, mais ça fait partie de la même situation pour laquelle on a invoqué la loi sur les mesures d'urgence. Donc, nous sommes en train de surveiller ce qui se passe, comme le ministre Mendocino vient de dire. Il y avait l'autre jour une situation à Windsor où la police de la place a empêché un autre blocage. Et on continue à suivre, évidemment, les forces policières à travers le pays continuent de suivre les mouvements. Et puis, une fois que la sécurité publique est assurée, on va révoquer la loi, les mesures. On ne veut pas les avoir une journée de plus, mais il faut que le pays soit sécurisé avant.
D'accord. En ce qui a trait aux comptes bancaires qui ont été gelés, est-ce qu'il y a un lien à faire entre les gens qui ont été arrêtés à Ottawa, une centaine de personnes, et les 76 comptes qui ont été gelés? Donc, est-ce que ce sont les comptes de personnes qui ont été arrêtées par la police hier?
Ça, c'est les cibles aujourd'hui et c'était des actions qui étaient prises par les forces policières dans une façon indépendante de le gouvernement. Il faut souligner ça. Et ça, c'est la manière que la loi fonctionne. Sur le côté de le gouvernement, nous créons les politiques, nous créons les lois, mais c'est pour les services policiers pour prendre l'action, pour implémenter toutes les mesures dans la loi. Et peut-être je vais passer à le ministre Lametti pour des autres perspectives sur le fonctionnement de la loi.
Ce que j'aimerais ajouter, c'est que chaque côté est assujetti à la charte, donc on va continuer à les appliquer d'une façon équilibrée et raisonnable. Je ne vais pas parler des opérations financières ou policières. Ce n'est pas, c'est une situation qui continue. Et donc, ce n'est pas à un personne élu de donner d'autres commentaires là-dessus.
Thank you. Next question, Christian Pass-Lang, CBC.
Hi, thanks. Minister Mendocino, this is probably for you. You mentioned the amount of accounts that have been frozen and the number of and the amount of money involved in that. Can you clarify for us what happens to the money in the accounts when they're frozen and what may happen following the end of the emergency?
Well, the operationalization of the measures under the Emergencies Act is something that is being undertaken by police in conjunction with financial institutional partners, including the banks. So that is being done in an independent manner on the operational side, and it would be inappropriate for us to comment further due to operational sensitivity and to preserve the integrity of what is going on right now, which is a very sophisticated, highly coordinated operation that is being carried out by enforcement in real time. But I would stress that the numbers that we have been able to provide to you thus far, again, with the cooperation and the advice of law enforcement, shows very obviously how the Emergencies Act is being used to bring about the conclusion and the peaceful conclusion of the illegal blockades. This is one of the measures which does not require to be operationalized on the streets where there's the prospect of confrontation or physical violence, but rather by using powerful financial disincentives to encourage those to leave and to leave as quickly as possible and to not support the illegal blockades. I'd also point out that yesterday, Interim Chief Bell, who is the current police chief of the Ottawa Police Service, stressed that they would not be able to be carrying out the operations that are playing out right now in the streets of Ottawa, but for the invocation of the Emergencies Act. Now, this is a nonpartisan professional police officer with many years of experience on the front lines who understands what existing authorities there were prior to the Emergencies Act being introduced, who has said in no uncertain terms that this is an important and an essential tool. And while we're seeing progress, it is important to recognize that the operation is not yet concluded. And so I think here we have an example of someone with great experience and perspective, understanding and recognizing that up until the introduction of the Emergencies Act, that there were many challenges that had been presented to police and to law enforcement in bringing about the end of the illegal blockades, and not only here in Ottawa, but right across the country. And I want to assure you and everyone that is watching that this is a tool that is being used effectively to bring about the conclusion of the illegal blockades peacefully, expeditiously, but within the parameters of the Charter.
For my follow-up, while the police operation is happening in downtown Ottawa, MPs just really meters away are debating the Emergencies Act in the House of Commons. Can maybe Mr. Mendicino again, can you describe any steps that might have been taken to secure the House of Commons while this is all going on?
Security on the Hill is governed by the Sergeant at Arms and the PPS, who has the jurisdictional responsibility to ensure security on the Hill. But I want to emphasize that there have been open lines of communication between the PPS, the Sergeant at Arms, as well as the RCMP and members of the Integrated Central Command. We're very concerned for the safety of MPs and staff and all parliamentarians who are working on the Hill. In fact, as you saw, many of the blockades were concentrated on Wellington Street at Rideau and Sussex. And, it is quite impressive that thus far, the enforcement operation has been carried out without there being any significant casualties or violence thus far. I think that is a real tribute to the police services and the first responders who have shown up, who, despite the challenging circumstances, are doing a very effective job, showing restraint and patience, and showing, I think, a very level-headed approach. And what that has done is it has enabled us to allow Parliament to sit, because it is important that parliamentarians have an opportunity to debate the Emergencies Act. This is the first time it has been invoked. We do need to be transparent with Canadians. From the government's point of view, the measures that we have introduced are very targeted. They're very circumscribed to the circumstances that present us, and they have to be consistent with the Charter. And we're very motivated to giving all parliamentarians an opportunity to debate very publicly in the open chamber those measures so that we can be informed as to the necessity of the Emergencies Act so we can bring about the peaceful conclusion to the illegal blockades.
Thank you. I'll make one last call around to see if anyone wants to raise their hand for a question. And in the meantime, I'll throw one in. I wanted to know about the economic risk behind the emergency. We've seen border blockades. How might the government respond if we see another border crossing being blocked after the emergency order lifts? Would economic damage to Canada be enough to bring in emergency measures or to take other strong action?
It's an important question. I'll say a few words and then I'll pass to Minister Lametti and other colleagues. But certainly the economic impact that was caused by the blockades at the Ambassador Bridge to the tune of nearly $400 million a day, that idled jobs, that saw plants shut down, that created a devastating negative impact on the manufacturing sector, but not only in Southwestern Ontario, across various supply chains, cannot be overstated. And certainly, given the tactics that have been used by the illegal blockades to interrupt those supply chains at our borders, at other critical infrastructure, including at national symbols like Parliament, like provincial legislatures, like some of our war monuments, remains a going concern. And so there is absolutely an economic aspect to this that does present a very serious threat to our economic security, to our trade relations with the United States and other partners, which are critically important to our sovereignty. And that is indeed one of the things that I think Minister Lametti's rationale and explanation paper in support of the invocation of the Emergencies Act spells out, and I will turn it to him to elaborate further.
Thanks, Marco. What I would underline is that in the invocation of this emergency, so the use of the Emergencies Act in this circumstance, it was the ensemble of the various challenges at a number of different border crossings, as well as the situation in Ottawa, as well as ongoing surveillance, if you will, of other border crossings as this went along. And so it was all of that together with the economic impact that it was causing. Should we take away the Emergencies Act and a situation were to arise again, we would have to evaluate. So it's a hypothetical question to which none of us will ever give you an answer. It's something that we have to think about in each circumstance. Minister Blair, I wonder if you have anything to add.
Only David. Thank you, David. And only that the targeted uncoordinated attacks we saw on critical trade corridors at the Ambassador Bridge in Alberta and in Emerson, Manitoba, at the Pacific Highway in British Columbia, clearly demonstrated a very sincere intent on the part of the people engaged in those illegal blockades to harm the country. We saw the impact in Southwestern Ontario and in the auto sector, and literally thousands of workers who were idled by the actions of these individuals. The cost and the potential future cost to Canada by these illegal actions is very, very significant. And when we see targeted attacks on critical infrastructure such as transportation and manufacturing in this country, I think we have a responsibility to defend the country, to defend Canadian interests, and to defend our economy. And we have found it necessary, obviously, to use extraordinary measures and tools in these circumstances in order to do our job of doing what is required to protect the country. And we'll always stand on guard for Canada's interest and support the important work that law enforcement does and others in keeping Canada safe.
Can I just make a comment here around international trade? It is extremely important that that our trading partners continue to have the confidence in our relationship, and particularly in this trading relationship. I won't repeat what colleagues have already said, but in Canada, 1 out of 6 jobs in our country is related to trade. So it's very, very important to the economic security and that of the jobs and people in our communities across the country.